Hey guys, it's Carnifex, not the nerd. This video today, I'm gonna go over what now. I've done this video before. Whenever we finish a legendary, whenever there hasn't been something like super imminent in the next week or two. Obviously, we do have General Murdock event returning. For those of you who don't have him, he will be super useful whenever we get to Battlegrounds because he totally revamps the Goblin faction. They are totally different and much more useful with him than without him. So if you have your demons ready, go on and get him. But aside from that, either if you have already built your demons as much as you need to in order to get General Murdock, or if that's just something you can't reach right now, what should you be looking at? I will be putting out my free-to-play guide later today. That's going to be a bigger video. This is one just kind of giving you an idea of what I would advise you be working on right now as we prepare for Battlegrounds and as we have the final two legendaries to look forward to. So real quick on the legendaries. The two legendaries we don't have yet are Thalon and Buff. Now, Thalon is more along the lines of General Murdock. She completely revamps a faction. Not only is Nightyel's leadership not nearly on the same level as some of the other leaderships, but she gets stolen to be with Soleus teams unless it's an elf exclusive team. So, who do you have then in its place? The answer is Thalon. She's the only other she's the only other leader for elves in the game right now, and the leadership is really incredible. I mean, at some point when you have it maxed out, crit chance of all elves by 30%. You combine that with Sharps, like buff that he gives everyone, and they just have max crit chance, which helps because they recover 10% of turn meter upon landing critical hits and 50% chance to restore one turn to a random ability. So she's going to make them a monster, but we don't have her yet. And then Buff. Now, Buff, he's got a great leadership. He certainly could supplant Slinger as the leader of choice. With all the speed that you get, it's totally crazy. And the chance to decrease turn meter, that's all pretty solid. The tenacity increase could potentially help people who are trying to resist the initial Zera debuff. So there's a lot of stuff to play with here, but it's mostly his A2, A3, and his passive. His passive, even though they reduce the dodge, he's still gonna dodge like a. But his first turn, he's gonna be able to come around and do a turn meter swap with someone, which basically, if you time that out intentionally, he's going to be able either to go right into his dice throw, or another character is going to be able to go right into their second turn. There's nothing in that in this game like that. He's going to immediately determine the arena meta, and it will be a point at where it's kind of exclusivity. If you do not have him, it will be almost impossible to beat a developed team with him. So as we wait on these two characters, right, what are the two teams we could be looking at? One thing to consider is Thalon is only a 5-star unlock. So it is possible to get that leadership and to really revamp an otherwise kind of lacking elf team right now, exclusive elf team. You only need a 5-star in order to really revamp them, and Buff is going to be more crucial for arena meta. And since we don't know which faction out of the two remaining factions might make a little more sense to lean towards making sure you farm to 7-star characters once we do find out who they are. Now, who are they going to be? It's going to be either the Goblins or Pride. So Goblins, it doesn't look like we will be getting Thalon right away. Not like they have her ready to go like 2 weeks after Goblins, because they're focusing on Battlegrounds. Looks like she'll be released after. So that could potentially give enough time for Renara to come back. If Renara does not seem like she is going to come back before Thalon, then you can expect Goblins to be used for Thalon. The reason for that is ever since they've had legendary characters on factions have been required for a legendary. So let me break that down a little bit. So ever since they've released Soleus, right, as an example, they have never required humans to unlock a legendary without letting the Soleus event return at least once. So, and that's been repeated in other factions too. We saw this with Ember. Ember was brought right back around just in time before the Renara event. So, again, if we don't see Renara back, based on precedent, we can expect to see goblins be used for Thalon. I do expect Thalon to be next because it does really, and this is speculation, by the way. I have not received anything from the devs, and I wouldn't be releasing anything they didn't want us to tell you, and that would definitely be something they didn't want us to tell you right now. They haven't gotten anything, and I even sent them a message saying, hey, by the way, I'm doing this before you give us any info, so it's no conditions. I'm not spoiling anything. So this is a zero spoiler alert recommendation inclination. So if we don't get Rhaenyra back, it's going to be goblins based on the precedent that's been set. And the core team you want to look at for this, it's kind of a little hard to figure out because we don't have Thanessa yet. We don't have a healer. So will we see her released? Will there be some other character like they just released Count Delman? I don't know. But I mean, I would feel like you would need a healer, but we don't have one. So maybe there'll be an event where just you don't need a healer. Adam does provide the great damage decrease. So that will certainly help keep peeps alive. And along with all the turn meter that gets fed through the General Murdock lead, it will make it so General Murdock is even more valuable if we don't get a healer released in time. But I do think either Thanessa or a to-be-named future goblin character who gives healing will be released, because it's pretty hard to make an event like that. It would make it a lot easier the second time around if a healer had been released, and I don't think they want to make it that easy. So anyway, the core three are General Murdock, Adam, and then Instructor Gorham. Reason for that, again, General Murdock, we talked about him before, like with Thalon, completely revamps the goblin faction. Major Shot's lead is not awful. It's kind of like with an ideal, it's like circumstantially not awful, but for something like Arena, definitely better than the alternative based on who we have available right now. All the assists that come in, along with all of the debuffs that they provide on their basics, it's really good. And he does a lot of damage against Order enemies, so you can use him specifically against Order enemies, particularly elves, but again, we don't see elves being used a lot. Great overall kit and utility. Adam, that damage decrease is great, but he doesn't attack a lot. That's why we need that General Murdock lead, and it's why we need Instructor Gorham. Instructor Gorham is going to have, whenever it's maxed out, have Adam assist if he's on the battlefield, and then and the hit is referring to Instructor Gorham's hit, if his hit is critical, then Adam gains taunt. So really good synergy there. Helps Adam spread all those that damage decrease without having Kyra's counterattack on him. And so after that, it's kind of like a fill situation. I think if this event has 2 waves, Major Shot, despite all the hate I give him, will actually be a really good choice for this. And the reason why for that is because you will be able to leave him at that in battle mode state with his A2 up, so that it will work as a stun immediately in the second round, and or you could have his A3 up, which has a crazy long cooldown, right? You can have that A3 up, and you can have those both dropped right away at the beginning of the turn for the second wave, and that should help you coast pretty quickly through it, relative to if you had someone else. So I'm actually not hating on Major Shot for this at all, assuming that it is a 2-wave event. It's not like he becomes terrible if it's a single wave event, but his value becomes significantly more at that point. And again, I feel like we need some healer here. If that's not Thanessa, someone else, whatever, we'll see. But if it's assuming it was somehow not, it's probably not Major Old Lore, unless there's some kind of situation where Daze would be useful. If there's some situation where Daze would be useful, then Old Lore might actually be your guy. We don't know what the enemies will look like for it. Even though it's 4th Allen, we've seen times where characters from that faction are being used. Like when we unlock Solius, you're fighting a lot of humans, and some other just random ads, but a lot of humans, right? But then there have been other times where it's like, oh, okay, but now we're not fighting a lot of this type of character for this type of character. It's, we fighting a lot of randos for General Murdock, right, in the second wave. And in the first wave, it's elves. So it's just, could be all over the place. Amara is certainly not a bad pick, but neither is Sergeant Pigwald. I think Sergeant Pigwald is a little better suited to if it's fewer enemies, because his passive not this one. Oh, it's on his basic, where he's going to deal more damage to enemies that are below 50% health. Well, if you basically can wipe a tiny character before they even get to 50% health, that's not super helpful. But if you have fewer characters with a ton of health, then that could be more advantageous. There isn't a ton of magic damage on this team, which is one of the reasons why the burning doesn't help as much that you get from Amara. But she is still good. Inflicting burning that's still damage. It's AoE to all enemies, whereas Sergeant Pickle doesn't have the ability to hit all enemies, and she has that self-turn meter generation for herself, and the additional damage. So certainly not bad, but so Old Lure is going to be pretty niche if he's used, and then it'll probably be between Amara and Sergeant Pigwald if we do not get a healer. If we get a healer and it's a 2-wave event, I would say healer and Major Shot would round that out. So let's go to Pride, knock that out real quick. Assuming that we don't get any more leaders, which right now we haven't had more than 2 leaders for any factions, I wouldn't assume so. Almost certainly Hera is going to be the superior lead because this leadership combined with Renara's revive and solid healing, they're a really tough to take down team if you get some decent rolls on your dodge. Whenever all allies from Pride get a 20% dodge increase, whenever the battle starts, she gives that pre-taunt to Salvador, which is great. She has some other decent stuff in her kit too, but she is not going to be crazy damage. You're not expecting a ton of damage out of her. She's mostly about increasing the survivability of this team. I already talked about Renara. So Renara with the revive, with the shields and health regen from the healing. Obvious choice. There's no question. Salvador, you need a tank. We only got one, and in a way, he's one of the best in the game. I think it's really between him and Tromgarb for true tanking, best in the game. Little Baddie has some great utility in other ways, but just pure eaten damage, I don't think there's anybody else that compares to the two of them. And if you have this off cooldown, he's going to have taunt already, and even on defense, which is going to be relevant for Battlegrounds. How the characters react on defense, how smart they are is going to matter as to whether or not they're a better team for defense. So, got that great debuff immunity. Those core 3 are indisputable. Now, Revel's a really great character. He's good for gladiators to help you unlock those ability scroll events and the rune event for damage. Great choice to invest in. Obviously, the Kagi Boreas now tandem is not bad, and Yogi has some kind of like raid cheesing value. So I think after this, Boreas has the most synergy with the 4 most valuable characters overall. So I'm leaning towards Boreas at the moment, but I think having Kagi will be useful to develop for Battlegrounds. So now that I've gone over those, these are the characters you want to kind of look at. You do not want to touch Vorn with a 10.5-foot pole. You probably don't want to go anywhere near Yogi unless you really find value in the raid cheesing, and that may be really useful for raid 2. It's why I've been getting him to 7 stars, even though he's just a slow roll one hard mode character. Now, Battlegrounds. Right. Who are the teams that we're going to want to use? So we still haven't tested Battlegrounds yet. Probably going to start in the next couple days. But how it will work, you will probably want 4 designated offense teams according to like my current like strategy that I have. And then you'll need a couple like real defensive teams and a couple that are kind of more fillers, and they may probably won't hold for you very well, particularly if you're a free to play player. So based on what the cooldown rate is, the best situation is if you can just rush and clear all of your opponent's stuff. So you do want to lean towards your offense, but there are some factions, some team compositions that really lend themselves towards defense, and I'll get into that. So first, you're kind of like your top 4 teams for offense currently, and this will change as soon as we get Thalon, or at least the makeup of one of the teams will change as soon as we get Thalon. But the Slinger, Kyra, Shadar, Xantara, and then more Doom, right? So not pictured here because he's not a demon. That's definitely a top team that if someone puts their arena team on defense, you will essentially need that because the defensive team is going to keep state. So if you want to take a 1-2 punch, you can do that, but make sure you take out valuable people whenever you do that. I'm not sure if it'll have the if you leave battle reset like it does in Tower. I would think so, but we'll find out. The next team is, and the main reason for this is just the leadership. Zera getting rid of a tank's ability to taunt in round 1 is really significant for a lot of the defenses. We talked a lot about how survivable that Pride team is. If Salvador doesn't start off with his taunt, that team is going to be crap on defense. So since, and I'll just show you in a little bit, but the Pride team is one of the teams I recommend for defense, but it is easily countered by Zera. So filling in Tromgar, Hardork, and then I actually recommend bringing in Revel and Snorri. And the reason for that is as long as you go up against a team that does not have Hardork, and that is crucial, this will be able to wipe comps so quickly. Not only will you get 2 bleed stacks from Hardork and Revel at the beginning, and not only will you have Tromgar to kind of soak up that early damage, but also whenever Snorri comes around with that AoE in round 2 and then Revel right after, I mean, it's particularly on some weaker teams, that's going to be serious overkill. They are going to womp them, clear them out pretty quickly. So that is another really strong composition. After that, everyone's favorite Wizard of the Sun, Soleus. At that point, you're kind of running into the traditional arena comps that we've been seeing for a while. Soleus, Freezard, Cruel, and Nightingale, and either Ember or Little Baddie. It's kind of up to you and how you want to run it there. But again, the point with these offensive teams is speed, speed, speed. You will be able to use these teams again on offense. They'll basically go into a tired state for a set amount of time. They have a time they're going to have it at the beginning. They may make it longer. They may make it shorter. We'll see. They may vary it depending on the leagues at some point, if not at release. I think there's some logic to that. But again, we'll see how it rolls. Hopefully in the next couple days here. That is your next team. And the next one, again, if you do not have Goblins, is not an option for you. But I really think this is a really strong offense team, and that is the Goblins. They really can do. I mean, if you had a properly runed one, you had your arena mods on it, this team could take out Soleus with relative consistency. Problem was that you need your best mods on it, and you can kind of get away with it with lesser mods on a Soleus comp. So this is another great team because just overall they have such great synergy. And on defense, you're going to want some survivability on defense, because on defense, the defense is going to keep its state. So that's where healing becomes more valuable, whereas with offense teams, you will use them, they will become tired, and then they will be restored to original state. So they're not going to keep turn meter, they're not going to keep cooldown, they're not going to keep healing. All this is subject to change, but that is how it's currently set, and I actually think that that's the best way to do it, so that this is not like a timeout event, that this is an event that people are finishing for the most part, and so it doesn't get stale. I think that's the best way to go. So now into what teams I would recommend for defense right out the gate. Pride, where'd you go? I'm blind. Pride is the team that you will want to start off with. Hera with that leadership, creating the dodge, Renar with the survivability, Salvador eating the stuff. Again, this will force someone to use their a strong team against it, and it's someone that probably will make sense for them to at least use Zera against it to jack up the initial synergy here. But if there is someone who they didn't join recently enough by the time that this team comes around, right, and they don't have Zera, this is going to be a pretty rough team for someone. Even if you only have Hera at lower gear and Salvador at like mediocre gear, because he's got that taunt right off the bat, and even if you just max this ability, that's going to make him really survivable, assuming they don't have any dispels or anything. There are a couple ways that you can get, but with dodge, that dispel doesn't even always work. So really the only consistent counter to this is using Zera. But again, Renara, she's going to make this last, because the point is you want this to take a longer amount of time. You don't want them to be able to take out this team super quick. You want to gain that time advantage. So you're just clearing stuff faster. They can't catch up to you. Went out into heroes again, you silly butt. Next one is the Pandas, another team revolving around survivability. I would not recommend the Patriarch Chi lead for this. I would recommend the Kin Lee lead for this. Not only is going to give them more health, aka takes more time for them to die, but that health recovery here is probably better than the Chi lead. Also throwing in Hilda, again, multi-tank, 2 tanks now that are getting tank amounts of health added to them. Patriarch Chi is good. He's going to give the Crud ton a shield, and then Foul. At that point, it's kind of, Foul gives all that dodge, and she can do it turn 1 if you just have that max, or at least to level 5. She's going to apply some TMR. Really good choice. At this point, again, considering what people have, if you're not using Ember, you can certainly use her there. Having a stun right out the gate is not bad, even if it does go on the tank. That's not the worst thing, but it's also not necessarily the best. I think Master Duo is a really good fit because applying the slow and TMR can jack up people's turn orders that they've set with their speeds. In addition, he also provides healing, and whenever he's got his battle stance up, he's going to have the counter attack for a while. So a lot of good choices there to kind of make things go slow, because that's the main thing you want to do with the defensive team. You want to make things go slow for them. So those are my recommendations right now. This is what you should be working on right now. If you are not ready for General Murdock, get that General Murdock team ready. If you have General Murdock already, or if you're already set on him, these are the characters and teams I would look at slow building on. Particularly though, if you don't have the arena-like metas, those top 3 in particular with Slinger, Zera, Soleus leads, General Murdock lead as well, build those teams, but so you are not caught off guard, I would recommend at least building those core characters. For Pride, right? Hera, Salvador, and Renara. Again, probably Revel anyway because of Gladiators, but you can technically use Boreas and Kagi, and in a way they're kind of more farmable, even though Boreas is in the tournament, than Revel, because Revel's not available until later, and they are pretty rough farms, and he's only available on those hard modes. And then for the Goblins, that trio of General Murdock, Adam, and Instructor Gorham is indisputably the trio you want and need to have that be the best Goblin team. I hope this has been a useful video for you, and look forward to the free-to-play farming guide later today. Until then, nerd out.